So, hi everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jen Top in the College of Health. I am the Student Experiences Assistant Director, which is, I just said it totally backwards, Assistant Director of Student Experiences. Thanks so much for joining us for the first of our series of 3 health career panels. Be sure to mark your calendars for the next 2 panels. On Monday, February 9th, we're going to have a panel talking about government careers in health, and Wednesday, March 18th, jobs in health you've never thought of. So super excited about that. For tonight's panel, we'll be sure to leave time for your questions, so please add them to the Q&A. And my colleague Monica and I will be monitoring those. Tonight we have Dean Dolan, who will be moderating. Dean Dolan from the College of Health, of course, and joining us is Colin Reardon. Colin's been with Labcorp for 17 years and is currently the director on Labcorp's National Value-Based Care Team that supports ACOs, there's an acronym we need explained, physician organizations and health systems across the U.S. Colin, what is it? What are ACOs?
Right out of the gate, I apologize, Jen, warning me about acronyms. Yes, Accountable Care Organizations.
Awesome.
The other one I'll throw out there is FQHCs, the Federally Qualified Healthcare Centers around the country as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Colin completed his MA in Population Health Management for Johns Hopkins in 2024 and is currently a part-time Population Health Science PhD student at Thomas Jefferson University with a focus on applied health. He is an alumnus of Lehigh, though, and he says, go Lehigh, track and field and cross country. Also joining us is Andrew Sgarloto. After graduating with a BS in bioengineering and biomedical engineering in 2013 from Lehigh, Andrew moved on to earn an MBA. After working for IQVIA and MMIT, Andrew began working at Vynamic, and that is where he currently works as Director of Management Consulting in Life Sciences. Also joining us is Keck-Mulligan. She is the principal consultant at SKKM Solutions, LLC. After graduating with a BS in molecular biology from Lehigh, Sean went on to earn a master's degree in biomedical science with a concentration in pharmacological sciences. After working for Novartis, Immunogen Incorporated, and AbbVie, Sean launched her own biotech consulting firm, which specializes in organizational design, strategic planning, and cross-functional operational excellence. Finally, we have Jeff Anson, who we are thrilled was able to join us tonight, and he is a Lehigh alum from 2009, and he has a PhD in political psychology. Jeff is the owner of Half Moon Research, a solo consultancy focusing on conducting excellent qualitative market research in pharmaceuticals and related healthcare industries. Quite the panel. So I'm going to kick it over to Dean Dolan, and thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks so much, Jen, and thanks for organizing the panel. And thank you so much to the guests who joined us, all alumni. Just before we get started, I want to point out to students that alumni from Lehigh are one of the best things about going to Lehigh in terms of where you sit right now as students. So Lehigh alumni are known for helping Lehigh graduates. And so this is a great example of a way that they help, which is sharing their expertise and their experience. So you did yourself a great favor joining tonight. So thank you for taking the time to learn about consulting in the health and healthcare world. So I want to start us off just by asking everybody to tell us a little bit about a little deeper on your bio. So tell us about your journey from whatever you majored in at Lehigh to now. So, and what part of that is consulting? You know, did you go in and out of consulting? Just tell us that story, if you don't mind.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, it's that awkward moment.
Colin, you go.
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, so, and thank you, Dr. Dolan. I think I speak for everyone when I say thank you very much for the opportunity talk to the students this evening, and kudos to the students for joining on a snowy, cold day. So I hope everyone's doing well. I started my career after Lehigh working for Johnson & Johnson. I started off in an internship where I oversaw a pharmaceutical product speakers bureau. I was on a marketing team for a very well-known ADHD medication. And then I ended up promoting that medication for 6 years to various physicians and hospitals around New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Then I moved over into the diagnostic space, where I worked for the Laboratory Corporation of America, Labcorp. We're a national commercial laboratory across the country. We have data on over half the U.S. population at this point, which makes my job very interesting right now. Currently I'm on the population health team that helps support accountable care organizations, federally qualified healthcare centers, and health systems all over the country. So a lot of the consulting and things I'll talk about tonight are related to the data that we have. But it's been a great time, and Lehigh definitely prepared me for this fast-paced career. So, Sean, I'll kick it back to you.
Sure. So I'm probably, out of all of us, the newest to consulting, but I've been in the pharmaceutical and biotech space for about 25 years at this point. So I started off, I took a job at Novartis in data management in my first job right out of college. And so I actually took that job and was able to get a little taste of what it meant in terms of drug development. And what was nice is that I really gravitated towards it. I loved it. I joined the clinical development team short after, and then simultaneously went back for my master's degree, which was amazing and a great opportunity to actually further. I took a concentration in pharmacological sciences, which meant I was basically going to school for what I was doing, which was really nice. I progressed from clinical in about 15 years ago. I started running global program teams. And so what that means is that I was running cross-functional drug development teams, which are essentially the executive board for any drug that comes to market, has essentially a cross-functional executive board, making sure all of the components of drug development are coming together, whether it be regulatory, marketing, the actual technical development of the product, the clinical strategy, and really how you translate that drug to patients from both the commercial and medical side. So I did that for a long time, and I'm really passionate about that space. Prior to joining, in the last 5 years, I've been running strategic operations for medical affairs teams, which is a huge, huge component of drug development. But really it links together the commercial space, the medical space, and the clinical development space, and is really about how we translate the clinical data to patients, and it's a hugely complex effort. So I've been running the leadership teams and really translating what the medical affairs team is doing into the broader organization. But I've been doing that now at Novartis, but also in the biotech space for the last bunch of years. My biotech that I was working for, though, was acquired in 2024. I led the operational integration of my team into AbbVie Pharmaceuticals, which was a really interesting experience in itself. But since I came out of that, it's been a really interesting journey where I've realized that a lot of the experience that I've had I've been doing a lot of different things for the last 20-some years. And there's a lot of people that I've met along the way, but I've also picked up a bunch of skill sets, let's call it, and really have been able to do a lot of different things with that. So what's meant that I've been asked over the last bunch of months and the last year or so to just take on different projects or come and provide advice or give insights and help people design structures and things like that. So I've worked with a lot of consulting firms and on a lot of projects over my years in terms of bringing in that external expertise. And now it's been a privilege over the last 12 months, really, to be part of some projects where I've come in, gotten to take on different roles, gotten to take on different opportunities, but really been able to offer the expertise that I've cultivated over the last 20 some years and brought it to different teams. So I think it's that external perspective is really interesting and really important, and being able to kind of play that in a different way for different organizations is really helpful. I'm sure we'll talk more about it.
I can jump in and kind of be the similar side to Sean in the sense of my path and where I've gone. So I started my career actually through the Lehigh job board. I had a Lehigh grad who posted a role at IQVIA, and I had applied for it. And sure enough, it ended up working out. I was a member of one of their inaugural leadership development program classes at IQVIA. So went in to IQVIA, was like hardcore focused on analytics and data and learning everything under the sun as it relates to how we can marry all of these data sets together to really understand like commercially how a product is performing, things like longitudinal patient data and otherwise. And while I was at IQVIA, excuse me, they acquired a couple of tech companies that were more so focused on like the commercial side of pharma, things like a marketing operations tech platform, a social listening tech platform, things like that. And they wanted folks that were trained in IQVIA assets, but at the same time, like could manage clients and kind of be more hands-on with them than just kind of a technical person who, you know, is crunching numbers all day. And so my manager at the time was like, hey, would you be open to kind of being the first person in this what we called multi-channel marketing practice at the time that would go on to become like omni-channel. IQVIA would acquire several different firms in that lens, and it's kind of blown up into a big portion of their business today. But I was oddly enough employee number one, just because they asked me to take a chance. And after doing that for a couple of years, you know, no one likes being told early in their career that they are ultimately siloed. And so, you know, you're super specialized in this, and this is hardcore what you're good at. And so I had a colleague who was at IQVIA who had moved to a company called MMIT and knew nothing about market access. But it was this big trendy term that I was hearing around the office occasionally. And so he asked me if I'd be interested in coming over to MMIT, which stands for Managed Markets, Insights, and Technology, and helping them found kind of their client services business and helping clients understand what market access data means to them in that setting. So I did that for a bit, and honestly, just like MMIT was not all that it was promised to be. So I went back and got my MBA at night. And I knew that I really wanted to end up kind of in this more management consulting world. And then second kind of value of the Lehigh network is someone who I graduated with reached out to me and said, hey, your profile is killer. We are hiring at Vynamic, would love to kind of throw your name in the mix. You know, if you're interested in the opportunity. What he didn't tell me is that they had a really nice referral bonus too. But that ended up working out, and I've been at Vynamic for about 7 years now. What I do here is really more so in the kind of commercial pharma world. So where Sean was talking about kind of that medical regulatory kind of side of drug development, I'm helping and have helped primarily with more of the commercial side of drug development, helping them with their launch strategy, their end-to-end launch plan on the commercial side of things, making sure that their tech and data platforms are up and running. Oddly enough, also have worked pretty extensively with Novartis on that side, most recently with their radioligand therapy products, and that's an advanced platform. And then similarly have kind of acquired some weird skills here and there, and have played a couple of chief of staff roles to commercial pharma leaders over the last couple of years who are just looking for someone who kind of is a generalist who can do everything, who kind of understands marketing, market access, commercial. And so I've played that for a bit. And now I'm on a new project for 2026 that's going to be helping another medium-sized pharma company redesign their marketing operations platform. So really kind of have been a little bit all over the place. And that's kind of what management consulting is to a certain extent. You kind of play in different fields and kind of focus areas, but I will pass it over to Jeff.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Andrew and everyone else. And I see we're up to a pretty robust attendance, so that's really exciting. Glad to get a chance to talk with everyone tonight. I'm going to try to, well, I like my intro, draw a couple of through lines and also a couple of contrasts from the other panelists here, I think, just to get that dimension. And I like how Andrew specified at the end, management consulting as a subset of consulting. And that's one of the things I think that might be good to talk a little bit about tonight. I did things in a bit of a different order, so I'm definitely the newest person in consulting in this group. I took the academic journey first. So Lehigh was, I've always loved learning, very into kind of learning across different areas. That's translated throughout my entire career. So at Lehigh, I was a BS in biology, BA political science, BA philosophy, just really love understanding how people work and think at kind of every level. Wasn't sure what that was going to take me, so I went ahead and did a master's in bioethics, which was very interesting, kind of that applied philosophy to healthcare contexts. Definitely a degree I love doing, and there was no really obvious to go with that either. So the next step was, everyone who had bioethics related jobs had some kind of a PhD, so I knew that was my next step. The best match for me was political science because I realized I didn't want to be a lab scientist while I was at Lehigh, so I appreciate Lehigh for that as well. If you want to do that, great, and if you don't, there's lots of ways to apply those skills in other places. So went into political science, which is studying the systems of people, outside of them rather than inside of them. Went from kind of political philosophy into much more applied political psychology, did a lot of text as data analysis for my dissertation, and we're talking 2016, 17, where the faint glimmer of LLMs existed as a possibility in the future. But, in 2013, we were talking about what would happen if AI ever became a real thing. It is absolutely crazy to have seen that over the last 13 years. I was graduating in 2019, entering the job market right as COVID hit, which made job searching out of grad school really interesting. But the one industry that was growing probably faster than any other during COVID was healthcare consulting. So had a great contact at a firm called ZS Associates, applied there for what was an entry-level PhD job, just doing kind of general pharma business consulting as a specific kind of, which is business consulting is helping businesses tackle their specific business problems, and we were in that healthcare context. Got in very quickly to a subset of business consulting, which is qualitative market research, helping primarily pharma companies understand how largely doctors as the sort of consumer of pharma products, but also other people in that broader context were using their products. So there's a new oncology drug entering the market. Where's that drug going to get used? How's it going to be competing with other drugs in the space? How's the market going to evolve? Another subset within that is when you're doing market research, you have quantitative market research, which is usually survey-based, capturing a lot of, kind of high-level bits of data from a lot of people and then crunching numbers, or qualitative research, which is often interview-based. So it's really going deep, understanding the why. And I really caught my foothold doing that, interviewing doctors, and within the first 6 months of my time at ZS was, having that role of being the person who was actually interviewing the doctors for conducting this research. Really enjoyed that, but realized that as I continued to progress in a business consulting track, I was going to get more and more into the project finance and the client, the client services, working with kind of managing the projects. And I love the research. I love to learn. So I did kind of a quick turn, left the consulting track, and was able to rejoin as an independent contractor. So I'm kind of a consultant where I work with ZS Associates and other consulting firms to conduct qualitative market research. And I'm the person who comes in with general expertise for how that works. And I'm also the person who actually talks to doctors, insurance executives, nurses, patients, other folks. So I've been doing that for the last 2.5 years as kind of a really specific role within this very broad industry. Be more than happy to answer questions about it as we go.
That is great. Thank you guys so much. There's so much there. Even that was just really rich. Just reflecting some of it back, some of the things that I heard you guys say. One thing take a chance. Sometimes you don't know where it will lead. I love that. Sort of an emphasis on alumni connections, and that really can help. Some of you talked about building skills as you went. So you don't have to know everything on day one or when you're looking for a job. Like, you just have to have the sort of core skills of being able to learn, being able to talk to people. These are the key thing for starting, I think. And then I think also was really interesting, all of you guys have advanced degrees beyond Lehigh, and to hear when those came about, there's sort of the on-demand while you're in the thick of it kind of experience, and then the, hey, this is what I need for the next step, or reverse all that and do all the degrees and then get a job. So what that tells me is that there are a lot of paths into this. You guys also have very diverse majors that you did at Lehigh. I also love the sort of idea that both quantitative and qualitative skills could be useful in consulting. I think we heard that. And then, of course, everybody needs people skills. So anyway, thank you for that really great opening. So I want to go back to just defining. So you guys have mentioned consulting, you've mentioned management consulting, you've mentioned business consulting, and you've mentioned healthcare consulting. So can you tease that out for us? And I'm actually going to start with Andrew. Like, Andrew, since you're the director of healthcare consulting for Vynamic, maybe you could tell us at least about healthcare consulting. What is it? How is it different? And if anybody else wants to jump in and clarify, let us know.
Yeah. So from my perspective, like, what healthcare consulting is, so healthcare consulting in my context is management consulting with that healthcare spin on it. So what we do at Vynamic is, like, we only work in the health sector. We work with pharma companies, we work with health systems, we work with payers and providers. And so, what I would say is, like, my healthcare consulting is really helping, like, leaders in the health space with complex business decisions, and or realizing kind of those complex business decisions, helping them figure out kind of what their long-term strategy is, and then kind of putting the meat on the bones underneath that strategy to say, okay, how do we get there and get this business to that point? And then, I think Jeff also spoke really well about kind of the quantitative side of that. And so there's kind of qualitative and quantitative, the quantitative piece being obviously like the numbers, the data, the all of that kind of underlying that needs to kind of line up to meet that world. Where I operate primarily is in more of that qualitative supported by quant. So my world really partners with, like, folks like Jeff, folks like ZS, folks like IQVIA, or other primary market research firms that are going to run studies that are going to support the strategic business direction that I'm helping a client plot out getting to. And so, where I work in the launch planning front, like I was mentioning previously, was like, we are helping them kind of compile that portfolio of studies that are necessary to help them synthesize that launch strategy and turn those numbers into kind of that strategic business direction. I don't know if that answers your question, or I'm like, someone else could definitely jump in there and add to that. I know that I kind of sit in the middle of a lot of some of these roles here.
Yeah.
Maybe I can just. Yeah, maybe I could just tack on, because I'm also doing launch planning, but from, like, the medical side, and I've been doing launch planning for a while, so it's really interesting to kind of link it into that. But I think, for me, I've always said, 25 years, I'm like, no matter what role I'm doing, my role is about helping teams to bring together data-driven decisions. So I love the way, Andrew, that you just said that, because it doesn't matter that I wasn't a consultant or I was internal, that at the end of the day, it's about bringing a whole bunch of people together, figuring out what they're trying to do, and helping them to make the right decisions to get to where they want to go. So for me, I do that a lot through operations. So I would call me like strategic planning, but and operations, operational consultant. And I've done that in the development space, in the medical affairs space, and kind of all around the organization in the technical space. But it's really like, what is your goal? And now what needs to be true to actually get you to that goal? I know what you want to do, but now how do you actually, and then who do you need to bring together to actually make that happen? And it's really, not as easy as it sounds. So again, you summarize it so nicely, just to say that the people focus component is so critical to that, because it doesn't matter if you're an expert in pulling together the data or bringing together a team around the data. It really, you need to have that people focus component to actually make that happen.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about AI at some point tonight too, but I will just say, I don't think AI is coming for consultants, because I think what I've learned over my time in consulting is that people generally are kind of difficult to work together in that cross-functional environment. And so much of what we do as consultants is helping manage those cross-functional teams.
Yeah. And bring together different perspectives to get to a decision, honestly.
It's great. I mean, that is a really comforting message, I think, because I think we all probably have seen articles saying that, AI is going to decimate consulting, but we'll come back to that. It's great to hear that hopeful note to start out with, for sure. Colin or Jeff, would you want to add anything to that perspective on healthcare consulting?
Colin, go and I'll follow up. I have one more thought, but.
Oh, no, those answers were phenomenal. I would just say, as it relates to, you always want to keep whatever client you're providing services for. It's just so very important to keep their best interest in mind. And it's so hard. I heard Novartis, IQVIA, phenomenal companies. I was at J&J, Labcorp. It's very important to kind of minimize the noise that you're getting from your own company sometimes, and keeping the focus on what these organizations truly need. I think the most respect I ever got from any of the customers, whether it be a physician or an accountable care organization leader, is when I essentially said, this service that I'm supposed to promote to you, it is not right. You should stick with XYZ or take this perspective. Don't be afraid to do that, because in the long run, you get so much more credibility from the clients that you're servicing when you do that. Can't do it all the time. A lot of the time the services they have are going to be what they need, but every once in a while, it's a better approach. Just keep your clients' best interest in mind.
I think it's about just being a trusted voice and a trusted partner to them, 100%. Because at the end of the day, I think some of it comes back to you. Like, just because you're not selling them on something that you should be using right now, like, doesn't mean they won't come to you later, because they trust you to bring them to the right decision. So, I think stuff like that, like, I don't know, karma is a good thing.
Yeah.
100%. The ROI is definitely there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to maybe cap off with a couple other thoughts. Consulting broadly, helping people make decisions. Management consulting or business consulting is primarily helping businesses make decisions. And business decisions will often look a little bit different than maybe if your client is an educational group or, a nonprofit or something. These are all the kinds of consulting that are very different from business consulting. Healthcare consulting, often business consulting if you're working with businesses, or it could be working with, if you're doing healthcare consulting for a nonprofit group that's doing outreach work in Africa, then that's going to be a very different kind of consulting. We talked a little about primary market research. That's one part of what consultants do. And I think that that's probably what Andrew and I both do, but then there's lots of other things you can be doing in consulting that might have very little to do with that. And then the final thing, and I really love, Colin, how you brought this up, and just wanted to kind of like echo it from my own perspective, that you always have a client as a consultant. Sometimes, like I have a direct client who is ZS or a firm like them, and then a more distant client, which is a pharma company. So I'm kind of working through two levels. And a lot of what you need to do as a consultant is understand what your client thinks they want, and then read between the lines and understand what it is they actually need to learn and what they need to hear. And that's often going to be different than what they think they want, and having the people skills to communicate about that is, I would say, the most important part of consulting. And that's why AI is not coming for our jobs anytime soon, because AI can help us do that better, but it's not going to replace that skill anytime soon.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I want to just take a second. We still have a lot of time, but I want to let students know that it's okay to go ahead and post a question in the Q&A while you're thinking of it. Because I know sometimes you have it in the moment, and we'll pause and take the question. We don't have to wait till the end. It can evaporate, I know, if you don't sort of get it in. So feel free to drop in a question at any time. So I guess I think you guys have really laid out what consulting is. I thought, Jeff, I can tell that you have training as a philosopher, and the way that you laid out the layers there, that was awesome. So, consulting is helping people make decisions, and then you go from there to the sort of environment that you're in. So that was awesome. So clearly you guys do all kinds of different things as a consultant. You have over time, but it sounds like even sort of day to day that can look different. Can you just say what's the most enjoyable or interesting part of working in this space? Let's start with the positive. Anybody can jump in.
For me, I love that I'm the best part of what I'm doing right now is that I'm doing jobs that I've all my jobs of the last maybe like 15 years. But it's usually you're in one, and that's what your role and responsibility is, and you follow. That's, or at least that's how I've lived my life. And for me, it's very fun and exciting to be doing things that I've done in different spaces, and doing them for, and doing them in spaces where it really matters, and you feel like you're really helping teams really to bring, bring the right solutions to them. But ultimately, that I'm working in all different phases of development. I'm playing multiple roles. I am a fractional person here and there, and it's really fun to actually get to experience the world that way, not through like the rigidity of here is my job description and this is what I do right now. You're kind of plugging holes like as people have problems and need solutions and need somebody to support them.
It's great. Yeah. Anybody else want to speak to that? What do you enjoy?
The one thing that Lehigh did a great job of preparing, I think, all of us for is just in a very fast-paced lifestyle. You do not have much opportunity to waste time, and that is just something I've always found very appealing, whether it's time at J&J or at Labcorp. And like Sean said, it's just something different every day, and you have to come up with creative solutions to help support your clients. And whether it be that first month of COVID or analyzing a new accountable care organization and helping locate patients who need assistance, it's just it's always something different. So it's a great to pursue.
Yeah, just building on what Dean Dolan was saying a bit earlier and what Colin, you were just saying just now. The thing I like the most about it is, and I kind of alluded to this in my intro, I love to learn, and my job is to learn. And I think the job of any consultant is to learn, because you're always tackling a new problem. That's why they're talking to you, because they don't know the solution yet. It's a new problem. So you're adaptable, you're handling different things, you're immersing in different areas. And Dino, when you were saying, you don't have to have all the skills when you go and get the job, that is fundamentally not possible, and in fact, not the point for consulting. The point is that you are able to learn new skills as you go, not that all that you need to have is those fundamentals. And I think Lehigh does do a fantastic job of setting students up with that.
Yeah, I would just say, end it by saying, the collection of things that I've learned, it's just like, I feel like I have this basket of random knowledge, that it's really cool to like get in there, get a new project, focus on a new disease area, do something like that. As Sean mentioned, as Colin mentioned, it's these challenges that we're faced, and sometimes the constraints that are placed on us in these environments, to really deliver for our clients. Like it's just like, it's interesting. It's like every day is another puzzle or another problem. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I should point out,
That's awesome.
It can be very profitable as well. All our hard work does pay off in the long run. So it's a great career path, and there's some benefits to that too.
Yeah, so it's one of those, as they say, do good and do well kind of careers, right? You're helping, and you're doing well for yourself career-wise, which is awesome. So what's a downside? Like, what's something that maybe is your least favorite thing about your job? Or over time, maybe in a previous, version of your job, not today.
I'll throw something out quick that's kind of antithetical to the academic side. In academia, we move very slowly. We're very intentional. It's all about building on prior work. Consulting moves fast and breaks things. And you have to be quick and adjustable and adaptable. There's not always a lot of work-life balance. That's the nature of the beast. And it's in a lot of ways very necessary, and in other ways can be kind of frustrating, and finding the balance can be a challenge.
Yeah, I would just add travel could be hard depending on kind of the firm you work for too. Some firms, I mean, post COVID, it's not as bad as it used to be. But who knows? Things are getting wonky again in the industry. So some firms expect you to be on site at your client 3 to 4 days a week, which depending on where you live might be challenging, especially if you kind of are counting on being near friends and family for a good portion of your week.
I think maybe just because I'm on my own, my learning so far is definitely in contracting, like really being able to scope out how long something's going to take, and like the original ask. And I don't know if you guys have this, because it's just because I'm newer to this piece of the puzzle. Scoping out, you can scope out and say, okay, it'll take me X, it's this many hours, this much time, this much, this is my package. But what I've found is that people realize very quickly what you're good at, and and then start going, oh, well, can you do this too? And can you do this too? And we really want to do this. And like, I really love what I do. And my husband sometimes says I would do it for free if if I was, I don't know. So it's just like being very cautious of your time. Like, yes, to your point, the balance is absolutely, it's tough. Like, because you're balancing multiple projects and you're trying to, but the scope creep is real. And so making sure that your contracts are reflective of that scope creep without knowing what that scope creep is going to be, to me, is something I'm still learning.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially when you own your own business, right? So both you and Jeff have your own practices, and so that's I'm sure an extra layer of challenge there. So we have questions from students. I'll take a couple of those. I'm going to start with the most recent one, actually, which is because it matches what we were talking about a little bit. So what would you say are the top 3 skills needed in consulting? And we're going to play a game here. So if everybody on the call will write down the top 3 skills needed for consulting for yourselves, and then we'll see where there's overlap. That way we can get the most divergent answers.
If we put these in the chat, will they show up for everyone?
I think so. Let me see. That is a really good idea. Why not use the electronics, right? Let's see. You have to switch it from hosts and panelists. Actually, I don't think we can switch it. So I don't think the chat will work for everybody.
I think I only have that ability. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So you're going to have to use pen and paper or your phone. Write it down and you'll hear them. Top 3 skills for management consulting. I almost feel like we could have this as a quiz for all the people listening, because I think we've said them probably. What are the top 3? I don't know, but we've talked about some skills for sure. So going into teacher mode a little here. Okay. Just go ahead and buzz in when you're ready. No, I'm just kidding. Just stay Go ahead, and who wants to start? Andrew, will you start us off?
Sure, yeah. My 3 were communication, adaptability, and problem solving.
Okay, awesome. Those are great. I'm writing them down. We're gonna figure out what the top 3 are from all together. All right, Jeff, what do you have?
So also absolutely adaptability, people skills and communication again, especially because my job is literally to communicate with people. And for me, it's passion about what I'm studying. I have to know why I care about the interview I'm conducting, what I think is interesting, in order to really get that energy and that, that true depth of insight into it.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Colin, what do you have?
So yeah, adaptability, communication. I had both of those, and then I'll just add just an overall sense of professionalism in terms of reaching out to new clients. One of the other things you got to be aware of is eventually, doesn't happen a lot, but you will lose client as well, which you will get back once they realize what they've lost. So you always want to maintain that level of professionalism and. But no, all great answers.
That's awesome. Sean?
So I definitely I said executive communication is very clear. I cheated and made my number 2 a 3-parter, but I said it's kind of all the same. My data collection, listening, and learning, because at the end of the day, it's all about if people are not telling you things, if you're not able to listen and glean out the details from people or systems or processes or whatever it is, and really be able to soak it in and learn it, it's just, I think that's part of it, putting together the puzzle. And organization, I think keeping everything organized and straight and really being able to make sure that you are, not mixing your things up is really important. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I heard communication and adaptability as the clear front runners. And then I could see under problem solving, under that heading, your data collection, listening, and learning.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
way toward problem solving, right? So you broke it down a little bit, but so great advice. Thank you so much.
And maybe just adding on to Colin's, networking. And networking is something that starts at Lehigh, it's huge. And networking is, honestly, like you said, it's just you're going to have ebbs and flows of clients and customers, and really understanding what that pipeline looks like. Who are your key contacts? Who are the people that need your support? That's kind of, it can ebb and flow too. So keeping that network fresh is really important.
It's so true. You never know when, the colleague that you started with in the cohort is going to become a hiring manager somewhere else. You just don't know. Things happen.
Absolutely.
For example. So here's a question about advanced degrees. So I've been curious about the next degree to get after a bachelor's. It seems like it varies a lot. So does it matter whether it's a PhD, MBA, MPH, MHA, etc., or do you have a recommendation for what is most beneficial?
My recommendation is do it before you have kids. That's my recommendation.
My counter to that is do it with, what I would say to that is there's a sweet spot between having kids and having enough experience in a real workplace to be able to apply that degree that you're getting. And so that is the number one thing that I tell folks is don't get a second degree to get a second degree. Get a second degree because you feel like it's going to bolster your development. You feel like it's going to set you up for a long-term, career trajectory, something that is of interest to you. But I 100% cannot imagine, as you may have heard my toddler having a panic attack because she's being forced to go to bed.
Oh no.
A half hour ago. Definitely do it before you have a kid. But yeah.
That's good.
So the MBA is the traditional consulting degree. I think less and less there's an expectation that everyone has MBAs. I think probably 20 years ago, almost everyone in consulting did. Although the folks who've been in the industry longer would be able to probably say that. PhDs are, I think, a little bit more, there's more interest in hiring from a broader background in the last probably 10 years than there were further back than that. So PhDs don't generally go into consulting, but I think that some of these more kind of focused firms, the IQVIOs and ZSs, are realizing that it's really important to have people with varied skill sets to be able to attack problems from different angles. So there is really no right answer. It's what degree, I would say, meshes the best with you and your interests and your passions, and what's going to help you make a credible argument for, I have an expertise in this area that I think is really important and interesting, and then be able to leverage that in different ways.
Sorry, the one other thing I would just say is yes, MBA for management consulting tends to be kind of the traditional pathway. I feel like MPHs and MHAs sometimes also kind of land in that management consulting world. PhDs, like more of those like technical degrees, tend to be more on the quantitative side of consulting, is like my experience, or like, you know, specialized like medical consulting or things like that, like has been my experience. So, you know, not to say that they aren't all kind of applicable where you make them applicable, but I feel like that's at least in practice where I've seen kind of the two paths diverge.
And find someone to pay for it.
Yeah.
The companies will reimburse for tuition. And honestly, that was one of the driving factors, just in terms of continuing education for myself. You know, it is, you know, those are dollars that are going to waste unless you use them. So a lot of the companies today do offer that as part of their hiring package.
Maybe just a comment, just because I come from a little bit of a different perspective because I was in the development space and because I was not always consultant, you know, for me, getting a graduate degree became part of me advancing within the organization. Like if I hadn't gone, I would not have gotten continuous advancement and experience that I did. There were certain jobs that I took that were only, you know, you had to have an advanced degree. In the teams that I sit in right now, I mean, I'm surrounded by MDs, PhDs, and PharmDs most typically. So sometimes it's not necessarily about having the same degree as everybody, but being able to kind of speak the language and understand their perspectives. And that does come with sometimes it just comes with a different level of education. So regardless, but like I said, I would not have gotten certain ones of my jobs without it. So regardless of what you decide to do, there's probably not a right answer. I think you guys said it really nicely, like whatever you gravitate to and whatever you love, do that. But it did become necessary to gain the experience that got me to where I am right now.
I want to throw one more piece in on that, really dovetailing on what Sean was just saying. What Sean and I are doing, you know, being kind of off on your own, that's a later career thing. That's not where anybody's going to start out. A lot of these bigger companies, the IQVIAs and ZSs and Bains and BCGs, hire out of undergrad at kind of their entry level. And often the expectation is you'll put 2, 3, 4 years in and then go off and get a master's in something, come back with a promotion. That's a very common job structure, and it's something you should be thinking about and aware of as undergraduates at this point.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. And I would also say if you don't know what advanced degree you want, you don't know yet. And so maybe go get some work experience first. And it's okay that you don't know, because, you know, it's a complex world. Obviously, I think we certainly see that. So, so another question, what advice would you give a senior who's interested in health consulting that is looking for positions involving patient experience instead of the analytical or data side? So this is from a psych health medicine society major.
So, I mean, maybe since I work with people in that space, so patient advocacy is a really amazing journey to go on. In terms of, so patient advocacy would be a great space to start out and learn. You can learn even within the patient advocacy organizations, and it doesn't necessarily have to be even a full-time job. It could be a volunteer job, things like that. But patient advocacy organizations have a really strong voice in our healthcare community, and really understanding how they work, how they make decisions, how they work with internal organizations is a really, you know, and you work across organizations, could be a really amazing space to be on that patient journey perspective. But definitely, honestly, within medical affairs is very patient focused, because it's really about translating the data into what does it mean for my patient, you know? So anyway, sorry, Dean Dolan, go ahead.
No, I think that's really helpful. And so can you give an example of a patient advocacy group that students might recognize?
Oh, I'm in very niche spaces, so.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm sure
So I could give one. So the prostate cancer is like a big area that I've worked in. Zero prostate is like a big one. They're focused on like essentially eradicating prostate cancer. So that's like an example of one. You know, I would say like most of the big names, like your ACSs of the world, your American Cancer Societies of the world, things like that, not the greatest in terms of like patient engagement. So I would say like when you get into like more niche therapeutic area, like disease area, those are more like patient, really truly patient centered advocacy groups. That would be kind of worth exploring.
Okay, that's great. And looks like Jen dropped into the chat for everyone, which is apparently a thing you can do, which I didn't realize. Some links that tell us more about patient advocate organizations. So I'm glad you raised that. I think that's a different path, right?
Yeah.
And a really interesting and worthwhile one.
I would also add like patient services is like another area to consider exploring. A lot of like customer experience now sits in patient services organizations within pharma companies or med device companies. And so they kind of own holistically the end-to-end patient experience. So that's like, whether that's a partnership with a patient advocacy group, as Sean mentioned, or that's like providing access to patients that might not financially have the means to gain access to that product otherwise. A lot of times they have like financial, charitable organizations essentially associated with some of these pharma companies that also, they don't technically sit in the commercial world. They kind of sit in their own little bubble within pharma, but that's another thing worth exploring. And then also like patient marketing within pharma also now owns a lot of experience. And I would say any pharma company that doesn't have a very patient-centric marketing approach is doing things the wrong way. So I would say like patient marketing could also be something in that kind of like same patient lens, but might not be super analytically heavy.
Patient services is a really interesting space in an organization. I think like you said, it's really about every patient is an individual. So it's really about how do we holistically understand the patient journey and how do we actually make sure there's access to our medications through, for that specific patient. So it's a great space.
Yeah. That's great.
Sean and Andrew, glad you brought those up because I was going to mention that. One other kind of narrow thing is patients have the opportunity to participate in the market research that these pharma companies conduct. And there are groups that maintain panels of patients or doctors or other kinds of stakeholders to participate in this research. Rare Patient Voice is one of them. And you could go and look to work for one of those groups that supports patients and kind of helps that voice be heard through primary market research and other mechanisms.
Great. Great advice. So we'll move to another question. So how do you transition into a consulting career if you have no prior experience and most of your background is in research? Sounds promising to me.
Yeah, I could jump in because what I didn't say in my introduction here was, so I had no practical internship experience. Like when I joined IQVIA, I literally only had undergrad research experience. And so I was doing undergrad research on campus for 2.5, 3 years or so. And so in general, like with this and kind of there's another question in the Q&A right now that I'm seeing about like, how do you stand out in the interview process? Like, what I would say is take that job description that you've managed to find and make your skill set applicable as best you can. And so, if it's client management, you managed your professor as a client essentially. And whether it's if it's program management, did you develop out timelines for your research protocol and did you kind of execute that appropriately? What are your presentation skills? Did you deliver presentations to your professors or an advisory board or something along those lines? I think anytime that you can make the skills that you've learned in the research setting applicable to a consulting approach, and understanding that what consultants do is deliver for clients and translate difficult questions into solutions. That is the best way that you can really make yourself desirable to clients in kind of the interview process and or otherwise.
Just to extend that a little bit further, don't blow smoke, don't flop up your resume. It's really that's not going to serve you well. But one of the skills of consulting is learning how to repurpose your skills to new applications. So showing in your resume that you are intentional about doing that is really a really strong skill in and of itself.
Great point.
Yeah.
Colin,
very
you're going
quickly.
to.
Yeah, just very quickly. Yeah, just you're going to find students at Lehigh, we're generally very overly passionate about whatever we're doing. Just let that passion show in the interview. I think it was mentioned in the chat a little earlier. But also, the biggest mistake I see is you got to practice that interview for that entry level position. Really take some time to do some self reflection, do the role play, work with Lehigh. They got a ton of resources around mock interviews. I mean, take advantage of all of that and use it to your advantage. So I'll tell you, the candidates that I've met with regarding entry level, you'll be surprised at how passion does not come through on interviews and how people have not done the homework. It is really crazy. But yeah, everyone I've met from Lehigh and other Patriot League schools, they've done their homework, they're well trained, and more times than not, they end up with the job. So just wanted to share that experience.
It's really excellent advice. Anything else you would say about the interview process? Advice about sort of how to stand out? I think you've given some great advice, but just anything else before we move on? No.
I would just also
I'll
prepare for a
mention-
case study. Is the only other thing, if you haven't heard of case studies in kind of the business or management consulting world, there's plenty of them published out on the web. If you're looking for a career in either analytical or management consulting, most interview processes will include some form of a case study. That's, a business question that you're kind of expected to resolve on the fly. They may give you a data set, they may give you a packet, or they may kind of give you a challenge and ask you to come and present kind of your solution to that. So they all vary, but you likely will have a case study as a part of any sort of consulting interview.
Well, that's really good to know. And I believe that the Center for Career and Professional Development actually has, when you're talking about mock interviews, they actually have an AI tool that will interview you if you feed it your CV and the job description.
No
and
way.
you're in a booth, and this person comes on, like this AI generated human comes on and will give you an interview, and then it will give you feedback. And so that's really cool for Lehigh students. Something that y'all didn't have when you were here, I know, but
Definitely not.
I didn't feel old until right now, Dr. Bill. Thank you for that.
I know.
That's a really cool fact.
They've had
Yeah.
it for a while, actually. Like it's been a few years. Anyway, so that's pretty neat. Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. I can't believe how time has flown. We didn't get to AI, but it sounds like it's not going to kill everything. So let's go to Caitlin. The summer before pursuing a master's degree, what would you say is the best use of your time to gather some basic knowledge to pursue this type of career that many starting out may not have? So an internship, volunteering efforts, that sort of thing. Like what would you do with your summer before a master's program?
If you walk into any federally qualified healthcare center right now and say, hey, I'm just looking to volunteer and help your patients navigate billing or navigate referrals to a specialist, they'll find something for you to do. Believe me. And the experience you would get in that role would be life-changing, but I'll let the panel offer up some additional solutions. But yeah, don't be afraid of volunteering if you can over that summer.
No, maybe just to tack onto that. I mean, my first instinct on that one is just have ways to get experience and just keep. I mean, so Colin, you mentioned a great way to volunteer, get a job, whatever it is. But I think continuing to get experience, and I think especially when you're talking about interviewing too. I mean, the way to stand out is to show that you're proactive, to show that you're proactively reaching out and to gain new skill sets and information and start weeding things out that you don't like, whatever it is, but keeping on building skill sets and building an understanding of the environment that you're trying to get into, I think you can't go wrong.
I think that's such good advice, and it even makes the experience of being in school more interesting, right? Because you're thinking about this thing that you saw at the FQHC or at the wherever, and you're thinking, oh, okay, like I'm putting things together. So that's, so I think that's fantastic advice. So I'm going to give Andrew the last word here because he has some another encouraging thing to say about AI.
Yeah, no, I
Read what
think
you-
I just dropped it in the chat here. AI isn't going to eliminate consultants. It's going to eliminate and outpace consultants who don't know how to use it. So, figuring out how to use it, how to accelerate your own work, essentially make it work for you. We like to say we use AI as though we have a team of analysts underneath us, like that are doing all of the things that we don't want to do. And it's become so conversational these days with the way AI works that like you really can have a deep conversation and like pick its brain. Don't worry, it's still going to hallucinate every once in a while and give you something funny. So never just lift and shift the work that it's doing for you. But I like to think of it as my group of interns that I keep in the closet and engage with when I have the time.
That's awesome. Love that. A lot of agreement here. So, we're out of time, but thank you guys so much. As always, I learned a lot also, which helps me in my role. So we had students hang on and keep listening, which is great. Some excellent questions. Thank you to students for being brave enough to ask a question. I think it's really helpful. So, it sounds like Jen is telling us that if you want to re-watch this, it'll be on our YouTube channel, the College of Health YouTube channel. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. Enjoy the snow. Have a good night.